Okay, so we're now moving, I'm getting my geography right, I think we're moving east to Chicago, where I'm going to be joined by Sakid Ahmed, who's going to chair a service provider panel. And here he is, right on cue. Hi Sakid, how are you?
Great, Brian. Good to hear from you.
But now I've been told that you are the father of EPMP and the CN Vision business. How does that responsibility weigh on you?
Those are just rumors and exaggerations. I don't know who's spreading them, but I try to do my best. That's about it.
Right. All right. Well, look, I'll leave you to introduce your panel. I'm really looking forward to it.
Great. Thank you. All right. Welcome, everybody, to this session. Excited to moderate this service provider forum. We've got two very important guests on this forum who we will have a very casual chat around different topics that's impacting our service provider industry. Disclaimer, we shared some of these questions ahead of time to facilitate this conversation. We're also looking for questions from the audience to generate some interest and thoughts around this. So with that, I will start the introductions. First and foremost, we'll have Normando and Angelo from Mixo. Hey, Normando, Angelo.
Hi, everyone.
Hi,
Good afternoon.
Hi.
Like that. And then we have Kendall from Tizeti, all the way from Africa. Should show up any second. Hi, Kendall. How are you?
Hi, everyone.
Good afternoon to you guys. As part of the session, first and foremost, I won't take too much time, but give you guys an opportunity to introduce yourselves, give a little high-level overview of your company and your background. We'll go from top right. So Normando, maybe we'll start with you. So take it.
With pleasure. Mixo was born in the mid-'80s as a traditional IT company, and then evolved to be always on the edge. We tried to be always on the edge. And in 2005, we pioneered the first unlicensed fixed wireless access. And we continued to grow until now, when we support thousands of customers, fortunately, and a fully owned wireless network, which is very much made with Cambium products.
Excellent. Thank you, Normando. Any comments, Angelo?
Hi, excuse me. And yes, we are present in the various regions of Italy with Mixo, and we are preparing to open market in almost to enter national entry.
Okay, super. Thank you. And with that, moving on to Ken, from your side, a little introduction and background.
Oh, hi, everyone. Name is Kendall. I'm founder and CEO of Tizeti. Tizeti operates in 2 African countries in West Africa. In Nigeria, we're in 3 states: Lagos, the main commercial biggest city in Nigeria, and also in Ogun and Rivers, Port Harcourt, where the oil and gas is. And we're also in Accra, in Ghana. We operate as Wi-Fi.com in Nigeria and GhanaWiFi.com in Ghana. We're also a partner of Facebook, Express Wi-Fi, and we're one of the larger Express Wi-Fi partners in the continent.
Great, thank you, Kendall. That's certainly an interesting application with the Express Wi-Fi, so we'll get into that a little bit more. So my first question, needless to say, the current situation in the world with the COVID-19 pandemic and whatnot, it's on everybody's mind. So first off, to Mixo, and either one of you can take the question, what have you seen in terms of the impact to your network due to the pandemic? Elaborate a little bit on demand as well as how you responded and things like that. And then we'll shift it to Kendall and hear from his perspective. But Mixo, if you want to take it away.
I'll take it.
Okay, Normando.
The first effect was interesting, not so a direct impact in our operations, but we saw that the traffic pattern has changed completely. There was no more lunch dip, there was no slow rise in the morning. It was a consistent usage throughout the day. no, only night was counting as a slow moment, you know, and that was fascinating. It meant that people changed the things that were accustomed to.
Right.
The day changed, and obviously with that came the network usage. We saw up to 50% of increase of the network request. And that obviously led to backbone congestion. But that was fairly easy to overcome because we have a good meshed network. So it wasn't that hard to cope with that. But the most challenging thing was increasing the access network availability, and that was like a spectrum Tetris because we had to accommodate 40 megahertz channels, and that wasn't so easy anyway. We had to create spectrum from our occupation and try to be gentlemen with our neighbors. So it was a very big challenge, but it made our day. This Tetris thing when we trained in our when we were young was very useful anyway.
Armando, just a follow-on question. So outside of Spectrum Tetris, as you very well put it, did you end up adding more equipment? Were there customers looking for upgrades to bandwidth plans, things like that?
Yeah. We upgraded many BTSs, and with that respect, antennas was played a key role in that, because to increase capacity without making harm to the existing network,
right.
We had to use your new horn antennas and horn antennas in general. And in many cases, it was necessary to do some point-to-point, or let's say 1 point to 2 point things, because when businesses especially needed more bandwidth, there was no other way to accomplish that.
Okay, thank you. Kendall, over to you. How was your experience in this situation?
So just like you said, there's no off-peak till after 8 o'clock. So we saw that constant congestion of the backhaul. And what we quickly realized in the first few months was our wireless point-to-point links were not going to hold. And we're now seeing consistently where towers where we have 1 gig capacity were maxed out. So we're forced to move to 10 gigahertz connections. And then if you're going to go from 1 gig to 10 gig, and then at the core to 100 gig, in the middle of a pandemic, there was a lot of supply chain issues. So this is one thing where Cambium was great. Cambium's partner, Wincom, they were great at helping us get equipment during the pandemic, because now you're now racing against time to get equipment, whereas there's not a lot of shipments moving around then. It was a lot of medical supplies at that time. So we moved our core to a data center and had to upgrade some of the point-to-point wireless links that we had to fiber in the middle of all of those. So it was really the backhaul that was the biggest, that became the biggest problem. Initially, a focus was on access, but if you don't have the right backhaul, well, you can have all this capacity at your core and you can't get it to the customers. Then another thing we did was we also now started seeing latency complaints, because now people are now working from home. So internet is not like, because we're purely started as a residential play, but obviously the home now became a business location. So we now had to basically pair with some of the larger providers. So Facebook is in Nigeria, the data center, Google DNS is available there. So we had to also do that. So where we primarily had transit, we was cheap. We now had to go to pairing. But the good thing about pairing is even cheaper than transit. So incremental cost to us wasn't as much. So which was obviously will not pass all the savings to the customer. But
Thanks,
yes.
Kendall. Interesting. So a follow-on question. So now it's been 7-8 months, maybe a little longer, as we went through this massive pandemic. It's the end is not really in sight. There's some increases and decreases. what do you think fundamentally changed in your customer environment? Where I'm going with this is that if you think about broadband, right? You've got electricity, you've got water, the basic necessities. Do you think broadband is looked at differently now during this pandemic, and looking to the future, that it is now part of the absolute necessity?
No.
Kendall or Angelo, go ahead, please.
All right, no, thanks. No, more than ever, internet connection is a primary need. And I always say it's indispensable together with water and gas and electricity. Thinking about companies, internet is a necessary condition to support their business. During the COVID, we installed 23 new radio stations to support our customer and the local area.
I see. So you're 23 new towers you're referring to, correct?
Yes.
Okay. Yeah, it's correct.
Okay. Okay. So Angelo, I think what you're saying essentially, that your audio is just a little bit off, but I think I understand it, that you're saying that even before it was considered a necessity, but with COVID, it has become even more of a necessity. And do you see this changing at all, or is this more or less the new normal for the future? Kendall, maybe.
Sorry. I don't.
Okay. You're having some audio issues. I'll switch to Kendall. Kendall, if you don't mind, how do you see the future?
So what we saw now is internet is no more luxury. Folks just had like a mobile plan and felt that they were okay with that. Africa leapfrogged all of broadband and went straight to mobile. But what they found was if you have to work from home, turning on the hotspot of your phone, there's only so many devices you can connect to that. So all of a sudden, people now started shifting towards having internet at home. That has been happening gradually, but it moved exponentially over the pandemic months. Then we could also see from the billing side, because obviously you have to pay for internet. We started seeing people that used to make one-off payments start subscribing to recurring billing, because that way they didn't want to have that disruption where you pay one time, then you top up on a few hours, because then the internet is that important to them. So we started seeing this shift in movement from one-off payments to recurring billing, and people also, like you rightly pointed, upgrading the plans that they have. So we had people that had regular shared plans move to dedicated committed rates, because obviously they wanted it. Then we also started seeing something that we didn't see before on the upload side of things, because upload wasn't something that people cared about a lot, just your download speeds, because all you're doing at home was just watching movies, watching Netflix. But now when you're now doing video conferencing, which means you're now uploading data to the internet, it became an important thing. So that's another aspect where we had to make alterations in the way, in the percentage, 25% versus 75% upload versus download. But yes, it's moved past where people just think of it like a luxury or as an add-on, or for the kids to do schoolwork, homework. Now you're having a case where you're having this paradigm shift where internet is important. It's as important as power, it's as important as water, is the next important thing.
Thank you, Kendall. Thank you. Great. Moving on to a slightly different question. We in this session, in our whole summit here, we talk a little bit about fiber and wireless complementing each other. From that perspective, I'm going to switch it back to either Angelo or Normando. Either of you can take this question. How do you look at fiber versus wireless, or fiber and wireless, right? Needless to say, we are seeing, a lot of places where there's either aerial fiber or government-funded projects to expand fiber. We know the ROI on wireless is definitely faster. So as a service provider, how are you balancing the two?
I'll take it if Angelo is okay with that. Okay, we have a commercial name for that. We made up it some years ago when this wasn't a thing. We call our project offering, we call it Wi-Fiber, so a wireless fiber.
Okay.
And that, the difficult thing is matching the numbers. People are now accustomed to speeds that are in the range of 3 digits. So 100, 200 megabits or even more where there's the fiber to the home thing. So matching that, it's not easy, as we all know. So the value here we saw is that when someone is buying the service from us, they know exactly that we run the network from the exchange, from the upstream provider to the customer. And that is a value. Is a value that has an enormous importance, because here in Italy especially, the incumbent is all selling his network, and so you are not quite sure from who you are buying the service, where your traffic will go. And having someone who can assure they can control from top to bottom is a value. And that is bridging that gap with numbers. So the numbers aren't that important when you reach 100, 200 megabits. It's a question of numbers. There's no actual need for that bandwidth in the normal usage of a business or a family. So welcome new spectrum. It's very important. Welcome new technology. But until now, we did well with this paradigm. And that's not a thing that I think it's going to change very soon. So we value very much this support that can we give to our customers. Run the entire network.
And a follow-on question. So you actually are able to sell that message to your customers that we own end-to-end, and therefore we can guarantee some level of service level agreement, and versus a fiber who is probably buying from other sources and just controlling the last segment.
Exactly. It's an information that Angelo especially conveys every day. And even when we are in the need of wholesaling something to some other incumbent, we tend to let the customer know where our network begins and ends, and the incumbent begins and ends. And there are some cases where you can't be without an incumbent wholesaling to you something. But if we can choose, we choose wireless because it's easiest to implement. It's cheaper in some ways, and we can help the customer to tailor the service to their needs without delays in installing the fiber or any other thing that can be so very difficult, especially here in Italy with regulations and things like that,
Understood. Thank you. Angelo, did you want to add anything to that?
No, it's okay.
Okay. Thank you. Kendall, from your side of the world, similar story or any other comments on that topic?
So in my part of the world, right, fiber is not as prevalent, but it's starting to get a little steam. But obviously, if you're talking about the pandemic months, they weren't quite able to scale. You can't build fiber that fast. Right. So if you want to add additional capacity very fast, wireless was always going to win. And that's what we've always seen. So even when we compete in multi-tenant buildings, we're always getting faster deploy. And the customer really, they don't necessarily care how you deliver the service, right? It's fine. It's only if you're a bit technical, fiber is X and Y. But what we've seen, especially even in Ghana, where it's more prevalent, is the customer is more particular about the price point at which you can deliver it. And that's where wireless really shines, because fiber, the economics of fiber in Africa is it's crazy. Here, labor is cheap, but all of the digging, all of this permitting required is really slow. And for me, the way I look at fiber, for example, is fiber to the tower, right, is a better way to actually get to it. And then you still use wireless as your last mile, because that way the economics works a lot better. And then you're not guessing. Fiber is not something you want to build out and hope that they will come. They never always do. And what you find out is historically, most of the first people to build out fiber in any new areas don't own it, and they slow. Even Google, as big as Google was in the US, they slowed down after a couple of cities because obviously the economics. And they also found out that giving people 1 gig speeds is way more than they actually need, right? At any point in time for a standard suburban home. So we're seeing, yes, because they started to do a lot of marketing trying to say, oh, fiber is a little better and all of that. But wireless too has evolved. So I would still say in my part of the world, the economics is important because the customer is more price conscious, and trying to make the economics for fiber work is really difficult.
Great, thank you, Kendall. That makes a lot of sense. I'm shifting gears and going back to you, Kendall. What about something that we hear a lot now, right? 5G networks, the cellular networks and whatnot. How do you see that coming into your space? Are you competing with the 5G networks of the operators? Any commentary there?
Oh, okay. So the 5G auctions haven't taken off in Nigeria or in Ghana. In Africa, okay. There's literally, I think only South Africa has a pilot, as the case may be. But working, obviously, if you're a business owner, as a wireless ISP, you're wondering what will happen with 5G. So we have licensed spectrum in some parts of the country, and we started having those conversations with some of the larger equipment vendors. But I can tell you, the 5G economics now is as crazy as the economics for fiber, if not a little crazier, because there's not a lot of equipment vendors, there's not a lot of cell phones out there. So the technology hasn't dropped as much. It's even, if anything, it's 4G that is the bigger threat, because 4G CPE prices have gone down. The 5G CPE prices are something like $550. If you're going to cover that over any period, right? Take a guess. And you're charging $30, which means in 2 years you've just only recovered the CPE cost. Not alone, you're not even talking about replacing the 5G core, all of the 5G equipment, the 5G NOB. So I think 5G, if anything, is going to first start off as backhauling things, like using it as the last mile, where you're backhauling APs on the street and all of that, which is where it will shine initially. Because then, if you're conscious, because I know it may not seem like a bigger problem, financing and all of that in other parts of the world, but Africa is a little different in terms of pricing. And until the adoption is where you have really cheap mobile phones with 5G. Right, I don't see it as a threat in the near term. Maybe in the midterm we would see that move, but I think 4G is it's a bigger because now you can get cheap 4G phones. There are phones that you can get all the way from Asia that are affordable to folks in Africa, and that's where the bigger threat is for us. But we're also obviously we're watching it. You obviously want to be able to play attack or defense, as the case may be, and accept the pricing. Even before the CP goes down and the equipment vendors, there are a lot of operators that are actually questioning some of the spectrum costs on the auctions. If you see, I'm watching the auctions around the world, right. Some of the prices are mind-blowing. And this was where we were 10 years ago, when people were overpaying for 4G licenses, and it took a while for them to amortize the cost and return and get a reasonable return on investment. But operators have been beaten with the promise of 4G initially, and so they're a little more skeptical on our side of the world and saying, okay, let's watch how it progresses, and then we'll be able to then deploy capital to it.
Thank you for that. Makes a lot of sense. Angelo and Armando, either of you have comments on that part in terms of the Italian market, Italian operators, the arrival of 5G, and maybe in your case, it's a 4G story as well.
Hi,
Angelo, as security is for sure something to add, but I read just yesterday a memorandum of understanding, those documents made by ITU and organisms like that 5G can actually use the unlicensed spectrum, especially the 5 gigahertz band, without interference. That's a very interesting
statement,
thing.
Yes.
and I think that apart from all the economics involved there, I think that it's funny. Anyway, it's a funny thing. Angelo, over to you.
Angelo, yeah.
Yes, it's hard to product a commission between our business and 5G. Seeing the current plan development, our theory is arduous, and the technology we use are helping us to solve the problem. And hope there will be an upgrade to this technology with 5G performance. Our customers are not served by 5G network. Thinking about 4G, we find a minimal request from a user asking to save money. It's also hard to find a corporate customer asking for a 4G connection. They prefer wireless or fiber.
Okay, understood. So it's really not about a particular technology, it's about solving the problem. What is the customer looking for? Doesn't matter what you give them, as long as their problems are solved, that's the answer.
Exactly.
Okay, great, thank you. Kendall, did you have something to add?
Yeah, so if you look at it too, promise of 5G, all of the marketing efforts around it. But what we're seeing in places where it's rolled out is the range is not as great as you expect, right? Which is something wireless ISP. The first thing you would probably hear in any forums is,
how far does it go?
How far does it go?
Right.
But now, indoor penetration is a little sketchy. So you're now having a situation where they now have to really seriously densify their networks to be able to deliver the promise of 5G. I believe, this is theory, well, not even a theory, that when 5G matures, urban WISPs who have already been dealing with coverage, who have already been dealing with public Wi-Fi networks with ranges of 50 or 100 meters, will actually be in a pole position to actually operate better, because an average telco is fully outsourced as much as possible. They don't own and operate their networks. They use a lot of contractors. So when they are now dealing with a number of points of presence, a ton of it, it's folks that have already been accustomed to doing that with public Wi-Fi networks, that we already have the operational know-how to actually leapfrog the assets that they have, right? We have access to rooftops of all of our customers. We can put a millimeter wave devices there, and we're already used to doing it, for example, on the express Wi-Fi front. So I even believe that once the economics problem goes away, WISP that traditionally own and operate their networks will be in a better position to operate a 5G network, which is why it's good that even on our side, you are starting to see talk around the 60 gigahertz and it maturing. When it comes to managing those 60 gigahertz networks, WISP will be in the pole position to actually have the operational advantage to deliver on it than a telco from an operating point of view.
Very interesting angle there. I think I understand that very well. It makes a lot of sense. Moving to a little bit more of a technical area, as a wireless service provider, I think, sadly enough, I think I know the answer, but I'm always curious to hear your perspective. Your number one challenge in operating this wireless network. We'll start with Normando on the technical front. Number one challenge, and what do you do about it? And don't tell me it's just Spectrum Tetris.
No. Actually, it's a spectrum thing, but not as you would imagine. And that's a thing about being gentlemen. And since we are operating on unlicensed bands, it's so important to talk to each other if we compete on the same market, because there's no actual need to be on two sides of the same fence. No, you can do much better if you tell me, please, I think you're interfering me, or the opposite. Interference mitigation technology should bring, on the phone, pay attention, you're interfering with this and that. And that should be solved really, really friendly. And that could be of so much more satisfactory service for many of us. And I think that, I don't know in the other part of the world, but here in Italy, there's no such big cooperation. There's more the way of thinking, if I can harm them, it's better for me. I don't think so. And I collaborate with many of our colleagues that are gentlemen, and we try to do our business with the space for every one of us. There's no need to be so harsh on others' business. So it's spectrum. It's not Tetris.
No, I appreciate that. Just a commentary before I turn it over to Angelo and Kendall is that we've seen this, right? You can only build so much in the technology. You can only do so much in your product. If operators are not coordinating, and in fact, if you coordinate, you all win, right? I have stood in front of many WISP in sessions where I've preached that message. But as much as we say that, somebody comes in and loves to put a big dish and just fire up way above the IRP and 80 megahertz channels and things like that, right? Angelo, any comments on that? You're obviously on the business side. You see some of the other operators and other players. Any thoughts and comments?
Normando answered the question excellently.
The question was in terms of the technical challenges in running a wireless business. And Normando was saying that it's about spectrum, but it's also about coordinating with other competitors in the space and everybody working together to not interfere with each other. That was the question and the answer. I was thinking you had some comments on that from the business side as well.
It's important to coordinate and shape and patch together with operators, with another operators.
Okay, great, thank you. Kendall, you were nodding your head in agreement quite a bit.
Yeah,
any other color commentary?
No, just exactly what Amanda said. In an ideal situation, people should coordinate, but that never really happens. In fact, it's the converse, right? A new wireless competitor, we want to try to just operate on the same band so that the quality of service looks bad on your side, so that your churn customers can go to them. But what I've seen is I like what is going on with the folks in the US exploring the 6 gigahertz and talk about the 4.9. So expanding that band, I think, is the right direction for everybody, because currently the 5.8 is pretty much useless. Yeah, right. So on our side, on the Unit 2, which is the 5.4, our regulators did something different in Nigeria. They tried to they did an auction, a spectrum auction, and tried to license out 20 megahertz 20 to 30 megahertz slots in the 5.4 gigahertz band, which it's cool, but nobody's obviously going to check. People can still use it, right? 5 gigahertz equipment is cheap. So sometimes you're lucky, it works. But what has now happened, which I actually like, is there's a little bit of focus on 3.5 now, right? 3.5 didn't work out for the WiMAX guys. So there was a bit of idle spectrum in that location. And then all of a sudden, with the CBR, all the talk about the CBRs, all of it's now become a little bit more valuable. And that's a band that we now figured out that was going to be, over time, was going to be better. More equipment vendors. Cambium has a product in the 3.5 gigahertz band and CBR. So now when you have a lot of equipment vendors working in the band, the R&D costs come down, and then the equipment cost starts making a lot more sense. So what we've now started doing is in areas where we can secure 3.5, we can deploy fixed wireless access in that band a little better. But I know if we're looking down the road that obviously when someone is doing something, everybody's going to do the same thing. So we might end up in a situation. But I think what they've done in the US is the first time, which is try to do coordination at a central level, federated wireless and all of that. Same thing, our side is allocated, it's kind of likely licensed or licensed as the case may be, but not enough for the economics to be that crazy. But I know the folks on the 5G, just like Normando said, are also looking at that 3.5. I think that's even going to be the mid band for 3.5. For 5G is going to be 3.5. So that band is also going to, there's a lot of focus on it. So we'll see how it evolves over time. But currently, I think it's one option. If 5 is too crazy for you, 6 and 4.9 hasn't come in, the regulation around it hasn't changed. You can look at 3.5 as a solution to the interference problem, because to be honest, it is interference that's the biggest problem for every WISP and the quality of service. We can do a lot of things. You can do, but once you have interference, and interference is so crazy because it could be interference on the customer side, right? A bunch of customers are seeing it,
Sure.
and immediately you play. I like Normando's talk of Tetris. Immediately you move the the Tetris block to another frequency,
All right.
right? You have another set of customers that are now
Absolutely.
experiencing interference. So all of a sudden, who should I serve? Is it the last guy or the most vocal customer that is complaining? So it's interference. Well, it never goes away. Let's hope we do better with the 60. Luckily for us, 60 by inherently it doesn't travel as fast, so you won't have as big of a problem. But you never know, because you soon start seeing, you could see equipment vendors now start pumping up the IFP levels antenna. But again, oxygen will play its own part. So I'm not afraid of the 60 gigahertz as bad as what we saw in 5 gigahertz.
Great. Last question. I'm being reminded to wrap up our session here shortly. So last question is, as you look at the home environment, which is now changed, right? Whether it's kids working, doing schooling from home, parents working at home. As a service provider, do you see any opportunities of monetizing services inside the home? Beyond just providing that basic connectivity, are there other opportunities that you're looking at that you can share, or ideas? Angelo, we'll start with you.
Hi, but we already are into the process.
Okay.
We are developing different solutions for home, business or corporate, and the public administration customer. Especially for the last two, we provide a professional service, and such service storage, network security, video surveillance, virtual machine, and more. I agree. You agree, Normando?
I do, and the thing we are seeing is that when you say before the pandemic is correct, we didn't have many complaints about Wi-Fi. It's not covering the whole house. That was not a problem. Today it is a big problem. So our approach was mainly to give families for free other additional access points for their homes, and that is something that we actually using to be able to help them, because many homes are full of mixed technology, and especially they're not professionally configured or installed. So that's a thing for the future. People now understands that this is not plug and play all the time. So we think we will address this kind of problem for them, helping them, and that is for sure a business opportunity for the future.
Very interesting. Very interesting.
We always guaranteed of competence and skill to our customer. Today, it's more important to be consultant rather than just a salesman. This allows us to add value to our service and therefore revenues, in addition to supply of innovative hardware products.
Got it. I think that makes a lot of sense. I think what you guys, and it's an interesting thing. We as a service provider have always thought about making that last connection. But what happens inside the house is the biggest use case, right? At the end of the day, people want to connect their devices. So if your Wi-Fi is planned poorly, and you have a zillion devices in 2.4 right, inside your house, I've had the same situation, right? Amazon Fire Sticks running on 2.4, 11N, eating up bandwidth. So that's interesting. So that makes a lot of sense. And thank you for that response from both Normando and Angelo. Kendall, to you, how do you see monetization opportunities and your thoughts on that?
So the home is the new office, right? So what we're seeing, a little bit what Normando said, which is within the home, but we're not as nice as Normando. We actually sell it as repeaters. So, but we went through different phases, right? So initially, when our first initial set of deployments for a couple of years we're giving people beefy routers in their home, but we're seeing that they weren't appreciating it, and we're like, okay, working with the economics, let's give a regular router, just enough for you to, because you access it from your living room, which is just your TV and a bunch of folks. But what we now saw is folks are now asking, because you're working from home, your kids are doing remote schooling. So every aspect of the house has to be covered. And in Nigeria, most of the homes are concrete homes. Obviously, Wi-Fi doesn't get through it. So what we're now seeing is repeaters, but not just wireless repeaters, because wireless repeaters, they work, they don't work. You get more service complaints from the last year. As far as the customer is complaining, the Wi-Fi is not working. But the truth of the matter is, it could be somewhere that the single router is not working. So we're now starting to cable a second router to a second location, so that way you give more additional coverage, and there's a little bit of work, but it obviously the customer pays for it, so that's why it's fine. Then what we're also now seeing is
sorry, Kendall. So what you're saying is you're actually cabling inside the house, running Cat5 to another location and putting a second Wi-Fi AP inside the house. Okay.
Correct.
Okay.
And
because meshing is just using up more channels and things like that, right? So
yes,
it doesn't really solve your problems with concrete.
And they're halving the throughput when you get to it, and then your voice calls. But what we also saw, we saw additional service, voice service. So that's where people started asking for voice, because now you're taking conference calls at home. So this is not just where you can just be on a mobile phone for an hour, a conference call for an hour. So we're now even seeing that we want to move to routers that already have an RJ, like those Wi-Fi routers that already have a SIP client on it, so that you can just connect a regular phone to it. So that's additional revenue that is coming to us. Then what is also funny was we used to offer VPN services, but this was more for watching movies outside of your location. But we're now seeing folks want to connect to their corporate offices. They want things that are more stable. So we're seeing, so our router can provide an L2TP connection, a VPN connection direct to service. So we're seeing that we're providing smaller businesses the ability to have VPN services even to their employees' location. So that's another thing. And then you're also seeing people, customer service agents are now working from home, right? So so we're also now providing those kind of beefier routers, more expensive routers, telling you that the last yard is important. On your portal now today, you can buy a better router versus the stock router we give you, because it's now becoming important that the home is actually corporate. So you're now having, to your clarification, where you're cabling routers, you're building a mini office LAN within your home. And there's opportunity for that too. We're seeing people ask for those services. Video surveillance is also big now, because people, if you're primarily, your security was taken care of in your office location, but now you're at home, you want to see what's happening around the home. And because you're going to be working from your desk, you want to be able to check up on your kids somewhere else, where they're making sure that they're on the computer working. They're not on YouTube. Right. So yes, so that's also another big opportunity, video surveillance too.
Okay, great. Thank you for that. We are coming up to the end of our session. So all three attendees, thank you guys very, very much. I enjoyed our conversation. I enjoyed the responses. I think this was very insightful. So I appreciate you guys joining and presenting. And with that, I will hand it over to Brian.
Thank you. I echo everything you said. I thought that was a fascinating insight into the service provider issues, the dilemma, the opportunities, the challenges, especially in COVID. So a fantastic session. Thank you all for that.
Thank you. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you.